Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist and today doing an Eldlich deck profile. So I'm really excited to do this one for you guys because this deck is the ultimate trap deck that summons out one of my favorite boss monsters in the entire game, Eldlich the Golden Gucci Lord. So without further ado, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell next to become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards. Like in your name, description of every single video, getting your signed cards in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month to your Patreon. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Eldlich the Golden Lord. This card is definitely a 3-of in the build because this card is such a powerful boss monster. And as the ability, you can send this card and a spell or trap card from your hand to the grave, and then target a card on the field and send it to the grave. And if this card's in the grave, you can send a spell or trap you control to the grave to add this card back to your hand, then special summon it, giving it 1,000 extra attack and defense points, and it can't be destroyed by card effects until the end of your opponent's turn, which is an amazing ability to be able to use to basically bring this card back to your side of the field as a 3,500 attack point boss monster backed up by all of your different trap cards, and it's such an awesome card in this deck. We then play 3 copies of Lord of the Heavenly Prison. Lord of the Heavenly Prison is really good as a 3-of just to help protect your back row by revealing this card in your hand, plus it can get you to the exact trap card that you need. We then play 3 copies of Cashiera Fenrir. Fenrir is definitely a 3-of in the build because this card helps you spot and remove cards off the field. You can easily special summon itself to your side of the field, and it can search another copy of itself every turn, which is an amazing effect to be able to use. Plus, it's super easy to summon out your copy of Fenrir and get your copy of Eldlich the Golden Gucci Lord on your side of the field, and just go in for game with these 2 awesome boss monsters. So, that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get in to the spells. So for the spells, we're just going to be playing a few, starting off with Pot of Prosperity. Pot of Prosperity is really good as a 1-of in the deck to basically just help us dig into the deck for the exact cards that we need, especially since we don't really need the extra deck. We then play 3 copies of Pot of Extravagance. Pot of Extravagance is amazing in this build to basically just let us draw 2 cards, and it's a really cool card in this deck, especially since we don't need the extra deck. We can use this card to basically let us draw 2 cards directly from our deck, but the only downside is we have to activate this card as the first activation in our hand for the turn during the main phase, which is not that big of a deal, but it does require us to banish 6 cards from the extra deck at random, which is again not that big of a deal because we really don't need the extra deck, but it's amazing to help us draw 2 extra traps so we can just control the board. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get in to the traps. So for the traps, we're going to start with a single copy of Skill Drain. Skill Drain is definitely a 1-of in the build to be able to basically just lock down the board because our copy of Eldlich resolves in the hand and in the graveyard, so it's not that big of a deal to be able to just activate our copy of Skill Drain and lock down the board. The only card that this really affects in the deck is our copies of Fenrir, and at the end of the day, we can just summon out Fenrir as a 2,400 attack point monster, which is totally fine. And this card is really good in the deck overall because it really stops the opponent in their tracks, especially since our big boss monster is Eldlich. We then play 3 copies of Conquistador. Conquistador is a great trap monster that has the ability to special summon this card as a normal monster that is a zombie light level 5, 500 attack, and 1,800 defense, and this card is still treated as a trap card. Then, if you control a copy of your Eldlich the Golden Lord, you can destroy 1 face-up card on the field, and during the end phase, you can banish this card from the graveyard to set an Eldlich or spell or trap directly from your deck, but you only use 1 effect of this card per turn, and only once that turn. We then play 2 copies of Huakero. Huakero is really cool as a 2-of in the deck. This card lets you special summon this card as a normal monster that's a zombie light, level 5, 1,800 attack, 1,500 defense, and it's still treated as a trap card. Then if you control a copy of Eldlich, you can actually banish a card from either player's graveyard, which is usually going to be your opponent's graveyard you're banishing from, but it's still really good to be able to summon this card out to your side of the field, and then it shares the exact same effect as your copy of Conquistador. Basically set one of your copy of your Eldlichs to your side of the field by banishing them from the graveyard, which is a really cool effect. We then play 3 copies of Eldlich Scarlet Sanguine. This card is really good as a 3-of in the deck because it instantly summons out your copy of Eldlich, which is a really powerful effect to let you special summon a zombie monster from your deck or graveyard. But if you control no Eldlich monster, you can only special summon an Eldlich monster with this effect, which is the only card you're ever summoning this card anyways. This card also has the ability to lock you into zombie monsters for the rest of the turn, and also you can banish this card from the graveyard to be able to set a golden land spell or trap directly from your deck to your side of the field, which is always going to be your copy of your Conquistador or your Huacaro. We then play 3 copies of Dogmatica Punishment. Dogmatica Punishment is really good, and we run a lot of targets in the extra deck for this card to help us pop cards on the field or draw cards with our copies of Garua. But this card is amazing in the build because we really don't use the extra deck all that much outside of using this card. So this card is amazing in the build to send either an Elder Entityness to be able to pop an additional card, plus this card popping a card, getting you 2 pops off your copy of Punishment, or sending a copy of the Tri-Brigade Arms and then following it up with a copy of Garua to get us a draw and a pop, which is really nice. The only downside of this card is it does lock us out of the extract, but it's not that big of a deal because again, we really don't need the extract outside of sending cards to the graveyard for this card's effect. We then play 3 copies of Ice Dragon's Prison. Ice Dragon's Prison is an amazing 3-of in the deck. Basically just deal with your opponent's monsters and get us a boss monster on the field. This lets us target a monster in your opponent's graveyard and special summon it to your field, but its effects are negated. Then you can banish a monster from both players' field that have the same type as each other, but you don't have to actually banish. You can just use this card as basically a monster reborn to bring back one of your opponent's cards to your side of the field and use it as a boss monster. Even though its effects are negated, it still can attack, which is such a powerful ability to be able to use with Ice Dragon's Prison. We then play 3 copies of Torrential Tribute. Torrential Tribute is amazing in this deck to be able to use this card as a disruption because it will destroy every monster on the field when it's activated, which is such a powerful effect to be able to use, especially with their copy of our Eldlich the Golden Lord not being able to be destroyed by card effects when it special summons itself out by its own effect, which is such a powerful ability to be able to use. So this card is definitely a 3-of in the build. We then play 3 copies of Karma Cannon. Karma Cannon is really cool in the deck as a 3-of because this card changes as many monsters on the field as possible to face down defense position. Then if either player controls a face-up monster, they must send them all to the graveyard so they don't control any face-up monsters, which is a really insane effect to be able to use because this card actually affects the player and not the monsters, so you can actually out towers like boss monsters like Full Armor Master or your copies of Ultimate Falcon. Even though they say they're unaffected by card effects, this card affects the player and not the monsters, so it will make your opponent send them to the graveyard instead of sending those monsters to the graveyard. It makes your opponent do it, so it still affects those towers like boss monsters. So this card is an amazing trap to deal with towers like boss monsters, but also use this card as basically a massive Book of Eclipse. We then play 3 copies of Solemn Judgment. Solemn Judgment is really cool as a 3-of in the deck to basically just use this card to say no to anything, and it's a really powerful card in the deck, and as long as you're in the game, you always have half to pay for this card's effect. We then play 3 copies of Solemn Strike. Solemn Strike is really good at dealing with your opponent's monsters because this card has the ability, when a monster would be special summoned or a monster effect is activated, pay 15 or life points to negate the summon or the activation if you destroy that card, which is a great effect to be able to use with this card's effect. Basically just lock down your opponent and just stop them from summoning or activating a monster effect. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to start off with Flying Mary. Flying Mary is an awesome card that we just recently got out of Rage of the Abyss. And this card is actually made for Eldlich for the tri-deck version in the OCG. But this card is actually amazing in the deck. So it lets you target one of your level 5 or higher zombie monsters that's banished or in the graveyard and place this card in your spell and trap card zone as a face-up continuous spell. And if you do, you get to special summon that card to your side of the field, which is an awesome effect to instantly bring back your banished Eldliches back to your side of the field. This card also has the ability, while this card is a continuous spell, you can target a level 5 or higher zombie monster you control and destroy one monster that your opponent controls with attack less than or equal to that monster's, which is a pretty easy thing to do because your copy of Eldlich will come out with 2,500 attack points. We then play 2 copies of Silo Hat Rabbit. Silo Hat Rabbit is really good in the deck to be able to work with our trap monsters, just instantly getting them out on our side of the field. Plus, this card cannot be destroyed by battle, which is such a powerful effect and helps us pop spells and trap cards is when you activate one of your trap monsters and it's special summon out to your side of the field, you can target a spell or trap your opponent controls and destroy it. We then play 2 copies of Link Spider. Link Spider is great for your copy of your Huakero and Conquistador to be able to link them away, so you can basically bring out your copies of your Scarlet Sanguine by banishing your copy of Huakero or Conquistador from the graveyard. So this card is just really good in the deck overall to out your own copies of your Conquistador and Huakero, so you can use their effects. We then play 2 copies of the Tri-Brigade Arms. Tri-Brigade Arms is great in the deck. This card is your copy of Dogmatic, a punishment target that's 3,500 to be able to pop monsters on the field. And then this card will also, when it touches the graveyard, let you send a copy of Garua to the graveyard, which will let us draw a card, which is really cool in this deck. We then play 3 copies of Elder Entity Nist. Elder Entity Nist is really good in the deck as a 3-of, just to help us pop additional cards with Dogmatic, a punishment. We then play 2 copies of Gustav Max. Gustav Max is just basically a burn for an additional 2,000 points of burn damage to close out a game, and it's really good because you have Lord of the Heavenly Prison and Eldlich are both level 10s in this deck. We finally play a single copy of Pleiades. Pleiades is basically just a bounce that you can use your 2 trap monsters to make this card, and then basically just bounce cards off field, and it's a good option in the deck because you just want to play this card as a 1-of. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you enjoyed. This deck is super fun to be able to play. If you guys have never played an Eldlich deck before, you should definitely give this deck a try, as it's amazing to be able to play, especially now with Flying Mary helping you recover your banished Eldliches, which is really nice to be able to do. And it's overall just a fantastic deck and one of my favorite trap decks in the entire game. So that's good for this one, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.